allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic who stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call. Cindy Beard is here, is absent on bereavement issue. Other sick members. Anybody have a conflict of interest with any items on the Okay. How about moving the consent agenda?
Move to approve?
Second, second by Steve and Joel. All in favor? A lot of big items on that. Number one being the county budget. Yeah.
And the 41 for Flag Star, is that our street lights or the traffic lights?
The lease on the
Is the street lights.
yeah, lease on the street lights.
Yeah, and that's, when we upgraded the LED.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a big underpaving bill on it.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, well, it's a larger sum than the county budget will do that. All right, for approval of minutes, we don't have the minutes ready from our August 26th meeting. We'll find those at our next meeting on September 23rd. We did pass around the amended minutes from July. We don't have any items for the assessors tonight, nor do we have a public hearing, so we'll go right to open session for members of the public. Does anyone in the public have any remarks about the meeting?
Just the notes say our next meeting on the 26th of September.
The 23rd is Monday.
Right, but I'm just noting
Right, yeah,
that
wrong.
it says.
Elsewhere it does say 23rd. So members of the public?
Debbie Stallings, two things. One, I just want to give kudos to the folks out at the recycling and the dump. I mean, they've been really helpful with a lot of odd things that I had to take out lately. They're always very nice, very helpful, and I'm sure they don't get thanks a lot. So I just wanted to make sure.
You get the opposite of thanks.
Yeah.
And the second one is, I don't know if anybody's read anything on the issue that's coming up on the floating camps around the lakes. I know that it's going to be taken up in the state legislature, but I also think that the towns need to be taking a look at that too, because there is no regulation on those. And just for example, I mean, you can put anything on pontoons to float. But a few years ago, my parents had someone come in on the lake that put really one of the bigger boats, it's really for ocean. And they just dropped anchor out in front of them, and people saw them at night, just throwing their refuse overboard and everything else. Had to call the police, and the police came and told them, you know, the lake was not that kind of stuff.
Ground, yeah.
But, you know, I'm also going to send a letter to the other towns that border the lake, because I think each one of the towns needs to take a look at it too, because the people are paying their taxes on the lake for the view and not for somebody they have to worry about.
But Lake Association I was reading has taken a formal position in opposition to.
Yeah, I know they have, but this is me personally, that I think needs to be done as well.
Okay. Other. Darren?
Barry Hutchins for Island Road. The ongoing question that I have, and I'm sure you're waiting on the administrative committee to meet on the second public session. Is that correct? That you're?
Yeah, they haven't had a look at that yet. We talked about that a little bit after you left, after our last meeting, just to get a sense of how the board felt about adding a second opportunity for the public.
Jane and I talked about that on the phone a little bit, and I wanted to comment on that a little bit.
Sure.
That plays in a little bit with the other issue that I have. And they both actually tie in together. Is the other issue that I wanted to bring up plays into my thought process as to why we need that second input session from the public to be allowed. And at the 26th August board meeting, a discussion was brought up, and this was the reason for the conversation that Dana and I had on the phone, and I had sent an email, I believe it was
Yep.
disseminated to all of you. At about, and I didn't even know, and I don't know if it's the town that puts these meetings on YouTube. Is it the town doing it? Okay, I didn't even know we did that. But I'm thankful for that, so I appreciate you doing that. So I went and I found the meeting, and the email that I had sent reflected wrongly that I had said that Jane had made a statement regarding a regional ambulance service. And I was wrong. I told Jane that I would do my best in researching it, and if I found that I was wrong, I would publicly state that I was wrong. So I'm doing it. What I did find, though, on that YouTube recording of the meeting was at about 40 minutes, 27 seconds in that meeting, Jane enters into a conversation. She starts a statement where she refers to, it says, the concept that it's not just a Dover regional facility. And the statement is made in reference to, and I'm not trying to take anything out of context. It's made in reference to the future, way down the road, future, the facility of fire and police, which I strongly will support when that comes. So having said that, in the middle of that, where I was wrong in quoting Jane, it was actually you, Tom, that came into that and then said, especially depending on how the ambulance service idea takes on. And that's where I do split hairs. And I really, this goes back to the second public input session that I want so badly. I wish that I could have addressed that at the last meeting, because to me it would have been incredibly important to address it right then. And it could have been put to rest right then versus here we are now bringing it up. What were those references to? Number one, I have great concern, not necessarily with Jane's comment. In our conversation on the phone, and I don't mean to rehash it, it was a good conversation, but at least for the people, the public that are here, I don't believe that it should be referred to as a regional building, a regional facility. It's a Dover building. I understand the concept of it being fire and police. It's a Dover-Foxcroft safety facility. It's for our town, as far as I'm concerned. So take the word regional completely out of it, as far as I'm concerned, one person. Having said that, the further comment that you made, Tom, regarding the ambulance, especially depending on how the ambulance service idea takes on. I would like clarification on that because the taxpayers have already approved it. There really should be no concern with how the ambulance is going to take on. The taxpayers have already said, we approve it. And if I'm wrong, correct.
Well, no, let me respond.
So please.
Yeah,
And then if I can continue after the.
sure. Yeah, you're right, the ambulance service is just for Dover-Foxcroft only. We are not looking to get into the regional ambulance service. And we've been consistent about that. Now, my reference was to, we don't operate in a vacuum. Just a week before our meeting was held, there was a front page story in Bangor News, for instance, about how Northern Light Mayo is taking their ambulance out of Corinth, and the town of Corinth and Hudson and some of those communities that had been covered by Mayo ambulance are now wondering what they're going to do. On top of that, Northern Light in Bangor, which also provides ambulance service for that region, has started sending out bills to the towns that it formerly covered, charging them a per capita cost to continue just to cover those towns, not to cover the individual ambulance calls that they get. So, to put it mildly, ambulance service in this entire region is undergoing a massive big flux right now and uncertain. Now it's hard to extrapolate from that situation of uncertainty and saying that Dover-Foxcroft is going to pick up ambulance coverage for, the 50-mile radius. That is not our intent at all. It just shows that what we're talking about and what Brian Gaudet is, I think, has been very proactive on getting ahead of that curve for us. Is a conversation that's happening in similar areas of the region. I did the little calculation based on the per capita cost that the Northern Light was charging for these other towns that have been affected. And if they did that same issue with us, we would be getting a bill for about $75,000 a year just as a subsidy from our community to provide, for Northern Light to serve us. So, we have to have these in the back of our mind too. We're taking some steps here, but who knows how this is going to play out. That doesn't mean that we're going to be expanding what is not even an entity yet, a concept, and doing anything beyond the borders of our community. Is that clear? Or not?
I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand the need to even address that issue at this point in discussing the Dover-Foxcroft ambulance service. There's no need, and I'm not arguing. I'm just having a hard time getting my head around why even at this point, at this stage in discussing the ambulance service being provided to Dover-Foxcroft residents, why do we even need to look at what it would cost a Dover-Foxcroft, the town of Dover-Foxcroft, because we as residents, we've already approved it. And I understand we've approved the purchase of the ambulance, but it kind of goes without saying that we're going to approve the funding of the service itself. Otherwise, we're going to have an incredibly expensive vehicle sitting there doing nothing. And why I would read further into that is because the way that I look at it is, okay, the only reason that I could see someone looking into those numbers is if there were conversations taking place that, hey, we know what the state's doing. We know that these larger ambulance services are pulling away from other communities. We know maybe this is an opportunity that we can approach these other communities and say, we just bought an ambulance. Would you like to talk to us? So I want to make sure that we get on the record. No, those conversations are not taking place. And I think that it's a very fair thing to get on the record.
Yeah, and no, those conversations are not taking place. But also, you're taking a random comment and extrapolating it into something that doesn't exist. And my only point, Barry, was to say that there are changes coming in EMS coverage. We're trying to react to that, but there might be other changes that we can't even foresee right now because things are rapidly changing. Now, if you want me not to say anything about this at a meeting so that no one is confused about what I'm trying to talk about, I'm just talking. I could be happy not to speak, and that way you would be able to misinterpret what I do.
Well, I think that is a comment that probably we can both agree is not something that you're the chairman of the board that represents me.
Right, but if I have to worry about how everything I say is misinterpreted, then that has a chilling effect on me opening my mouth, and I like to keep things a little involved.
I think the best way to think about it and why.
Can I respond to that after Steve?
Sure.
Thank you.
Why you hear the word regional. I think the best way to put it out to people is that we have a regional problem. That it's not just a Dover-Foxcroft problem. We have a Dover-Foxcroft only solution for us. But I've heard from other people, they don't understand why we're gonna be spending all this money on an ambulance. And it's because they don't understand that there is a much larger problem that we're trying to get ahead of. So I think it's extremely important for voters to understand that this is not just Dover-Foxcroft having a problem. It is a problem statewide and in particular acutely here in our region. And so if we don't take care of ourselves, which is what the proposal does, if we don't take care of ourselves, nobody else is going to be taking care of us, or at least that's the
I
assumption.
agree with you. Well, so we don't disagree.
Right.
We don't disagree at all on that. But to look at the dollars and cents at what it does cost other communities, I just don't see the need in doing that. Well, one second, and then obviously a rebuttal at that point. Unless there's a need to look at those numbers. And I understand the need to look at the numbers if you're attempting to convince taxpayers, hey, this is why we need the service. We've already been convinced of it. We approved it. And that, Tom, is also to your comment. I'm all for looking at numbers. I'm on board with that. I did it 20 years. I get it. But after we have already purchased it, it's here for the program that it was purchased for, to be used in Dover-Foxcroft. Now the numbers are being looked at as far as what it's costing other, and I shouldn't say other communities, but certainly the broader picture is being looked at. It's being discussed right now. So why would the broader picture be looked at if we have already solved the problem that we agree that we're solving, which is Dover-Foxcroft? And if we're looking at that broader picture because we feel collectively we need to address that problem with our ambulance. If we don't need to address that broader problem, why are we even looking at how to solve it with our ambulance?
We're not trying to solve any of the regional problems.
That's all I want.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing for us to solve. However, I do think that there are still some people in the community that are unconvinced that this is the right way to go. And even though it got approved, it didn't get approved by 100%. So there are some people that don't see the light yet. And it's early days. This is disruptive. We've never had to worry about ambulance service up until very recently. So this is really a new thing. And as Tom was saying,
still trying to sell it. And not wrong term.
Yeah, it's not selling so much as convincing maybe the fence sitters or the doubters that we have made the correct decision. And new information like what just happened. So this is after the vote. We just got new information that Mayo Regional pulled the plug on a neighboring town ambulance and that they're putting in a fee, basically a fee into community. And what we can say is, see, that's the direction we already saw that headed in. And so if you have doubts about us having an ambulance service and staffing it and paying for it year after year after year, here's some evidence that's checked in that shows you should be concerned about if you have a heart attack, getting an ambulance to your house.
I agree with you that the majority of the voters approved. And to you, Tom, if you took offense to what I said, no, well, you sounded like you did, and I think it's.
Well, I just think we're in danger of getting
No, I heard
too far ahead of ourselves here, Daria. And I would say that, we've taken the very first step toward responding to what we see as a changing environment coming at us. But I think there are additional changes coming that we can't foresee that we're going to have to react to.
I think everybody knows.
Yeah. Well, we're good. Yes, Bill.
Barry, I'm on the protection committee, and you have a good question, and there have been a lot of conversations throughout this whole thing. And one of the ones we had at the very beginning was transparency. Okay? At no point in time do we want anyone to think that we have had conversations behind closed doors they don't know about, that we're getting information we're not giving to the community. Because we all believe that we want everyone in this town to be a part of this process because it is a town issue. So when we're talking about things that came up, such as after we've already seen this coming and we decide we need to get our ambulance service up and running, Corinth loses their ambulance. Then there's this fee thing. There's probably more stuff that's gonna come up as we go down this process. I get caught at least once a day by people in some way, some manner, who still have a lot of misinformation about this whole process. You know, they're convinced that, you know, their taxes are gonna go up because they go on the ambulance. And I'm repeating the same things. It's just there's a lot of people out there that don't quite see the picture. And sometimes it's because they haven't needed an ambulance. They don't know anyone that needed an ambulance, had to wait on it, or maybe they don't work in EMS enough to see it.
Right.
So it is a challenge where we're trying to make sure we put everything out there. But at times I'm sure people say, well, why are they even talking about this now? The hard line we've had from the beginning is this is a Dover only ambulance. That is it. Because we are not looking to replace Northern Light in any way. We are trying to fill the gap just for our community. And that's a line we refuse to budget. Because at the end of the day, those are our resources that our town is funding here. And to suddenly take on a different town is going to stress and max out our system that we don't know if that town could even reciprocate with funding, which means now we are carrying that burden. And as much as we love our neighbors, times have gotten kind of rough. So I think that's probably where, you know, why this conversation comes out. And I appreciate what you're asking, but by no means are we trying to confuse people or go down a rabbit hole.
That was all that needed to be said. But when you do bring up researching of numbers to a person that is perfectly willing to say a vote took place, it was approved, but hey, we're gonna look at numbers again. Don't get upset when someone asks, why are you looking at numbers again? I hear what you're saying, but if a vote takes place, it's kind of like the damn question they got asked the last time. How did this happen? It's democracy at town.
Right, can we move on to another topic, another speaker? Anybody else from the public like to offer remarks this evening? Go ahead.
At the last select meeting, you were mentioning that, yes, Sean Piazza.
Thank you.
Hi, sorry. You were mentioning, Tom, that, Mr. Lazar,
Go.
that at committee meetings, things were a little less formal.
Yep.
And so we would have a little bit more give and take. That didn't quite work out the way it was, for the dam committee meeting between me and Steve Vermont last time, 3 days later. And I'm sure you're all aware of what happened.
Actually, I'm not right.
Oh, okay. Well, I was basically told to be quiet and sit down, and I wasn't entitled to participate. And that's illegal. Sorry, it's a committee meeting. It's a committee meeting, and it needs to be presented before the board. So I hope it doesn't happen again. But I do, you know, I do thank Chris Moss, who was a volunteer on the committee, that jumped in and used his authority as a member to request open public sessions. And everybody immediately had a unified vote on that to say yes. And so we shouldn't have that issue again. So, thank you.
Okay. Any other members of the public?
There's one online.
Go ahead.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I do have a question, mainly, Brian Godet- can you hear? Sorry. Brian Godet mentioned, some, oh, Sean Hadley, sorry about that. Sean Hadley. Sorry.
Sorry, you're only about an inch big, so we couldn't see.
Sorry, the light's off, but, yeah, Brian Godet mentioned some meetings ago that, you know, he was willing to respond to, a call with the ambulance, you know, basically right on the border. Now, I don't want to, you know, put a hypothetical in front of Brian or the committee, but, you know, let's say you got a call and Brian decides, well, hey, there's a house 10 feet from the border in the next town. I'm going to respond to it because Mayo's gone. Well, if you have a call from Dover and somebody else needs an ambulance, and let's say that person dies, does that mean the town of Dover-Foxcroft is now on a hook for a lawsuit? Because, hey, I get it, compassionate care has no boundaries, but the problem is Dover-Foxcroft has a boundary. And the lawyers know the Dover-Foxcroft have a boundary. So if somebody dies while you're taking that ambulance call because hey, look, 10 feet from the border, I'm gonna go to that house, but somebody dies, do they have a right to sue the town? Because, hey, you took it out of the borders, and the Dover-Foxcroft voters said no. Now that's a moral dilemma I don't want to put to Mr. Gaudette, but he mentioned it, and that has to come aboard. And people are, hey, Dover-Foxcroft is Dover-Foxcroft. It is a fixed boundary. It does not mean 10 feet, 100 feet. I wouldn't want to be in that position to make that decision. But the fact of the matter is that a lawsuit waiting to happen if something does occur, whereas that ambulance has crossed the line and somebody else needs it.
Yeah, and that's, Brian has mentioned how difficult some of those decisions could potentially be. I think at our next meeting, Brian is going to provide an update on the investment, is that correct?
We've had an update at the committee level,
Okay.
and, I think probably in October, at one of the October meetings, we'll probably be due for an update, to the full board, just till.
We'll have to query him about the Sean stuff. I know that's an ethical consideration. Firemen are conditioned to respond to alarms and not to help the people in distress and then worry about some of the other niceties afterwards. So, last time I talked to Brian, he admitted that we needed to put some further flesh on those bones. I mean, it really gives some extra thought to that, but you're right. The first time you go across the town line, makes it easier to go across the town line the next time too, so. That's why they have to make those decisions. You had a question?
I mean, quite similar. I mean, if I'm having a heart attack and I call 911 and Mayo says, oh, sorry, we're busy, and I die, do I sue Mayo? I mean.
Your survivors would sue them.
Because you would be.
Okay, you file this suit before you.
There's no easy answer to that.
No.
A lot of it comes down to what contractual agreements we come up with. Because obviously if Northern Light calls and says, our rig just got stuck somewhere and can't get back, this person's having an active heart attack, something like that. It would be very hard to stop a single firefighter from going to help that person, let alone the entire brigade who wants to go save a life. So part of the negotiation, my understanding is that is being looked into. And again, the goal is obviously not to leave Dover. But Brian will have to speak to us a bit more on that and
Talk about
try to come up with, because you're right, Sean, there's always the legality portion we think about. But
Developing protocols is what is. But he's also, but that's one of the frustrations behind the impetus to start our own service, because the firemen are already in people's homes that are in distress and in very difficult medical circumstances. And they're thinking, well, I'm not licensed to do this, but wouldn't it be better if I just threw this person into my vehicle and went immediately to the Mayo ER instead? Those are the types of ethical issues that we're dealing with. And we hope to make it smoother and more standardized response in the future. But it's a complicated, costly process, but it's also something that we don't have any control over the changing nature of this very, very important service for the future of our community. Anybody else have any comments? Yes.
Sure, Piazza.
Mhm.
Here's another one for your town lawyer. What if somebody who goes to Thanksgiving in Garland has a Dover-Foxcroft address on their driver's license and they're just a little bit beyond? That might be a good one to ask.
Split the hairs.
Yeah, I
for
know
the
they
rest of the
might.
night if we want to.
Whole thing is a mess.
Any other comments from members of the public? All right, let's close the public comment session and open up this select board comments. Steve?
I just wanted to address Cheryl comments about when Tom spoke about less formal meetings, he was talking about the subcommittee meetings, which would be usually 3 select board members meeting about things like policies and whatnot. It's less formal amongst basically the subcommittee meeting. The dam committee is not a subcommittee meeting. That is its own standalone entity. It's approved by the select board. But it is run pretty much the same as this board. And having the public comment at the end is fine. But having public comment come in randomly while we're discussing topics is it's just not appropriate, and it is disruptive to the process. So that's why we got into the little tip. Now that we've got and it's perfectly legal to run meetings that way. There's no question about it. So we do have, in the dam committee meeting, we now have a public comment at the end, which is fine. It's just while we're actually discussing things, we need to keep the public from, I mean, we already have 9 people on the committee. We don't need it to, the number was chosen because that is a manageable number to have for conversations, and adding extra people, random people that might not have been at previous meetings, it's not a good idea.
There was a gentleman that spoke up and he jumped in just like I just did there. I raised my hand and you shut me down, but you took his question on.
I took your initial questions, you just.
And then, again, this is a good example. This is the select board speaking, you
I
say
recognize
as
that.
your opportunity to do that. Thank you, Steve, for that clarification. Anything else that you want to mention?
No, other than the meeting was very productive. We did get a lot accomplished. We still got a
Steve
lot.
Arnold has resigned.
Yes, unfortunately, that's,
Jake. Oh,
Sorry,
good meeting,
Jake,
Jake
yes,
Arnold,
that's-
yeah.
Steve fixes my.
Right. There's a few Arnolds, there's a
Yeah,
few Arnolds.
yeah. He worked on the polls and he worked on,
Yeah.
so, yeah, and we'll have.
The intent is to replace them.
The intent is to replace them. We need to have, our next admin committee meeting, we need to select an alternate and have a discussion about that.
Other members of the select board have any items they want to raise? Okay, go for it.
You sure? Okay. I just wanted to acknowledge the front office personnel on Friday. I thought I was coming in to ask a real quick question and leave. Apparently, after a long week of their training, unfortunately, they had a computer glitch, but they handled it perfectly. I mean, there were lines, no one was yelling, no panic. They were multitasking, so kudos to them on a Friday afternoon after a long week. Also, the beach signs, I appreciate that. And someone has a real good sense of humor because I don't know if anyone's seen it out at the lake, but it says, do not feed the ducks. And on the other side, it says, duck poo hurts kids.
Oh.
Well, that was very creative to kind of.
Well, Emery's suggestion, right? The duck, do not
Duck
feed the
poop?
duck.
Is that it? I have to go sign it. Okay. And then, something that's been, I just need to say to the public, if anyone has a question of me, feel free to approach me either publicly or at Shaw's or wherever. And it's okay to say, is this a good time to talk? And believe you me, I will tell you, yes, it is, or no, I won't. Because some people are apologetic to say, oh, I have a question. And I'm thinking, well, ask it. And you don't have to schedule it, but so permission is granted to ask me a question. First ask, is this a good time? And I will gladly respond as best I can.
Good rules to live by. Other comments from members?
No, I'm quiet tonight.
Well, you got your duck situation taken care of. Steve.
That's Jack for some clarification on the order of things going on with all the bridges that are being worked on, because there's now work, I guess it has been accelerated and it's gonna happen in the intersection of Route 7 and 15.
Yes.
And so the question was, oh, so they're also going to do the bridge? They were thinking that they
Main
were
Street
all,
or Essex Street?
the Main Street one.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
no, They're,
The corner of something, they're building a wider radius for turning trucks on the corner of Main.
So there was some confusion. The person that was asking was thinking that that was all one project.
no, there's only the beginnings now of kind of studying the current status of the bridge and trying to, do some data collection for things down the road. So the intersection widening is on track, for next year. But not Main Street Bridge.
Right.
That's several years away.
Yeah, that's what I told them, but then I said, oh, but things change and maybe I should check.
That probably is the last project that will be done, the Main Street Bridge, right?
Probably.
Yeah, it's,
Oh, and a related question to that, has the DOT made a decision if they're, my thought is the answer already is yes, but I wanted to double check this too, as to whether or not they were gonna do a complete bridge closure on the Main Street one, or if they were gonna do as they do on a lot of other bridges, half.
You're talking Essex Street
No, the Main Street one.
for paving? Or for-
When they actually do the bridge reconstruction, do you know yet whether they're gonna have to tear the whole thing down all at once, or whether they're gonna do like many bridges we see where they have one lane closed and then they work on that and then they do the other lane?
That's part of their design process. They actually look at right-of-way availability, whether they could do a bypass. When they went through that process with Essex Street, they determined that they did not have enough right-of-way to put in a temporary bridge, so they have to completely close Essex Street. It's hard to imagine they would have enough right-of-way to do anything except close Main Street, but that's a process they have to go, they have to make a determination, and that's much further on and, probably a few years away.
Okay, so the decision hasn't been made, but it's probable that the bridge is gonna be completely shut down.
I think that there's a pretty good likelihood of that.
Yes.
And just by looking at the constraints on Main Street.
Okay,
I
thank you.
don't see how they could avoid that.
No, well, I mean, some bridges that are undergoing some partial repair, they actually still keep traffic routed over it, but this is going to be a full replacement.
Well, I mean, that, you probably hit the nail on the head. If they were to determine that they didn't need to do a full replacement and do a rehab, that probably would come into play.
Okay.
I'm not sure they've landed squarely on which one they would need to do, a rehab or a replacement, but it's probably exactly gonna be determined by that question.
Yeah, I just judged by the amount of concrete falling off, that it's probably a replacement.
Other comments? Joel?
Big shout out to our EMS, police and fire who helped deliver a baby on Route 15. You can see it in the news. We've heard the chief of police think about changing his profession, do that full time.
No.
Get your store pin.
Yeah, did you get your stork pin yet? Not yet. It's in the mail.
Checks in the mail, yeah.
Winter's coming. I know nobody wants to hear that. So please, if you have any trees that look like they're gonna cause a problem, if you're having problems with your road, let the town know with as much notice as possible. So we can get it on the list to get done before everything freezes up. I like winter because all the holes get filled in with ice and it's a smoother drive. I live on a dirt road, but I also don't like it when every time the slush comes, there's trees taking out lines all over the place. So let the town know we have someone that actually can go out and look at it, and we try to work to get those things taken care of, because everybody likes to have heat in the winter time.
Steve?
Before I forget then, there is a small fir, a medium-sized fir that's leaning on lines, right in front of Scott Green's house on the corner of Stebbins Landing Road. And they just put the fiber up and they wove it in between the branches and just kept going. And I looked at that and said, oh, yeah, because they're not authorized. They're just up there stringing lines. So they actually had to feed it through this fir that's leaning on the lines. And while we're at it, can they get the branch that's just hanging on one of the lines? It really bothers me. It's been there for 2 years. It has not blown off and it just really bothers me.
We'll definitely put that on the list and let that whole situation go away.
Yeah.
Is that town or is that CMP? Why is that
I
town?
mean, if it's a hazard tree, and it sounds like something leaning on lines is a hazard tree, was gonna end up in the road, we would take care of that.
And it's a small one, so it's not.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jane.
Well, my question is,
Thank you.
why not call CMP first?
Hmm.
I look at my electricity bill and
If the plans to get taken care of before winter, might not happen that way, but we certainly can call them.
well, I'm saying as a consumer, I would call, and I have called in the
No,
past.
they've never, I've
And
done it.
they've
too.
always come.
Yeah.
When I say wire, it's on the wire. Maybe it's my tone.
They said we better take care of this.
Oh, my God.
We don't want her to call back.
You show
Any
up on
other,
the call.
any other comments from board members? Okay, we'll close the, open session for the select board. Committee reports, we, had a protection committee meeting and items for that are on our new business agenda. Any unfinished business that anyone wants to bring up? All right, let's dive into the new business. So the first item is, proposed equipment release for police department, equipment, including a new, 2024 Ford Explorer vehicle, as well as body cameras and tasers. And we're doing this through a lease rather than capital equipment purchase. And you want to address that, Jack?
Yeah, I'll
That's what the funding, I guess.
Yeah, and I'll kind of start it off and Chief Burns can kind
Sure.
of fill in some of the details, but probably for the past, at least the past two protection committee meetings, we've talked about the issues that the departments had with the Explorer and how it's, proven to not be reliable and, not on the road, consistently and so forth, and the need to move on from that vehicle. And so, Chief spent a lot of time looking at, what options are out there that don't have a long turnaround time. But it also led to a broader discussion because there's some other capital items that are problematic for the department right now. The tasers we have are outdated and you can't get parts for them, batteries for them. They're not serviced anymore. And same with the body cameras. We look at it as an issue where some of that might have been addressable in the annual capital budget, but not all of it. And so the best way to kind of approach, the cruiser, we didn't anticipate being the issue that it is now and the need to act on it now. So with that kind of in the mix, what we feel can put the department in a strong situation in terms of equipment that they need every day and use every day, is to kind of package this up, do a lease purchase, and then we can budget so that, the payment, we can budget, through our process, for the next payment. But then we can make sure that everybody's equipped and that, the cruise is reliable pretty much in real time. And it's, it's really not financially impactful to do it that way.
Okay. You want to follow on to that, to Chief Burns?
Sure, so the 2021 cruiser that we have has basically been a lemon since we got it. It was in the shop under warranty work more than probably any new car should be. We started really running into issues with it towards the end of last year. And the issues that we're now running into, they're just getting more expensive and more expensive. I'm already 40% through my repair costs, budget line, basically just on that car. And it's sitting in our parking lot requiring an $1,800 fix.
How many miles is on that unit?
It's not many, I think it's around 72.
So really, this is, you don't typically replace after 3 years, right? So I figured there had to be some story behind the story.
Yeah, this is not typical for a police car. Usually you can get at a minimum 5 to 6 years,
Yeah.
give or take out of them. This car just has been nothing but problems since we've had it. And those problems are getting more and more expensive to fix. So with that, when I brought that to Jack, we did start this broader conversation, and the issues we run into right now with our body cameras, which we started to address that last year. The current body cameras we have are no longer serviceable. They're not, it's a completely discontinued line. So we did some patchwork to kind of help us get through, which is a repair service that WatchGuard will do. The problem we're now running into is WatchGuard will only swap one for one. So we'll send one back, they'll send us replacement while they fix that one. But now we've got 2 more that are down that are waiting in the queue. So we're just getting further behind in terms of that. And the tasers, unfortunately, I didn't learn about the tasers being no longer serviceable till after we started. We got basically all the way through our budget season last year. So that wasn't something that I was really in a good position to try to address that last year.
Okay, well, that answers my questions then. And there are many ways to skin a cat, if you can plan ahead and see around the corner and come up with the exact number you need, that's one thing. But if you have a situation like that, you cannot predict that. And just,
Chief, can you explain the Axon program replacement?
Yep, so Axon body cameras, they have a program, it's called their TAP program, it's basically their insurance. So what that does is Axon has said that we know the batteries in our body cameras only last about 2.5 years. So every 2.5 years, we can replace, at no additional charge, we get new body cameras. And then at the end of a 5-year window, which is what our licensing and software agreement would be, which at the end of that 5-year period, as long as we renew that licensing and software and evidence collection agreement, then that continues. So we basically would be in a perpetual loop of essentially every 2.5 years, we would be eligible for new equipment. Plus that puts us in the position that we could get not only new equipment, but upgraded equipment at no additional cost.
and you've got the paperwork here that gives particulars. I'll run through it briefly. So we're looking at, the cruiser option is a little over $60,000. The Axon body cameras, which would be 8 of those. Total cost for that is about 38,000, and then the tasers would be a total of 18,000. So we're looking at like $120,000 lease cost for all that equipment. We finance through Androscoggin Savings Bank's lease program, 5 annual payments of $28,330. That's something we can just plug that number in for the next few budgets coming up, and at the end of the 5 years, we can own it for $1. So it's pretty common.
Right, and then we're on a program where we're getting body cams replaced.
Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Yeah, so we won't run into the same issue with body cameras again.
And hopefully not with the cruiser.
I hope not.
Yes.
You haven't had any problems like that with other Fords?
Nope.
Recently, I haven't heard
No.
of that. Like I say, once in a while you get a one.
Yeah, I mean, we've had to tow this car in the last 6 months, probably 4 times. Because it's breaking down on the side of the road.
There's nothing like having faith in your equipment and your. Yeah. Yes, correct.
And it's 3 years, the Ford, and we've exhausted all of our manufacturer warranty guarantee. They hate you now, or they just wash their hands?
I think, well, at this point, they've washed their hands, but I've tried every nook and cranny to get some of this stuff covered under warranty, and nothing that's going on with that car right now is covered under warranty.
And it's a Ford and you're buying another Ford, are we all Ford? Is that?
Yeah, so
Listen to what he's got.
there's 2 things. There aren't many companies that actually sell police cars.
Right.
Yeah,
So the Ford Explorer has 3 motors that they offer with their Interceptor package. One being the standard 3.3 liter, one being a 3.3 liter EcoBoost, and one being a 3.6 liter turbo. The 3.3 liter EcoBoost is what basically the dealerships are telling me they're seeing most of the problems with. So what we're getting is not the EcoBoost version, because that seems to be the one trend for the cars from that generation that they seem to be seeing the most problems with.
and just the leasing bit, Jack, this isn't the first time we've done, it's not new to us, we're not.
No, it's a common way we go about equipment,
Right.
purchases. If you remember, back about a year or so ago, we replaced the sidewalk machine
Yeah,
this way, and we, replaced the loader out at the transfer station
Right.
this way. So it's, it works out well, to be able to, spread the cost over, a number of years, and then, plan for it in the upcoming budget cycle. And, so it's worked well.
All right, so we anticipate having 2 motions. The first will be to approve the purchase of the whole package, the cruiser, the body cameras, and then the taser. And then the second one would be to enter into the lease purchase agreement to finance all these things. So
I move to
go ahead,
approve
Jim.
the purchase of the cruiser body cam and the tasers as presented.
Second.
Seconded by Joel. Further discussion on that? All those in favor? It's unanimous, 6-0. And then the second motion, you're on a roll, Jen.
I move to enter into the lease purchase agreement to finance the police capital items as presented.
Have a, Joel seconded that, and we have all the documentation from, the leasing, agent, in Chicago, before us. Any discussion needed on that? All of this.
Is this something, it'll move quickly then? This is gonna be quick paperwork, the leasing paperwork. There's inventory that we can buy this,
Yes.
so it's not a 6-month. We're gonna do this and it'll happen.
From what I've been told, the turnaround time for getting the new car outfitted and decaled is roughly a month to a month and a half.
Right.
That's
So, so
Yeah.
That's a pretty good turnaround.
before winter hits. All those in favor of the second motion to go police purchase? That's unanimous, 6-0. Thank you. All right, so that took care of that. So, hopefully better luck. There's nothing more frustrating than sitting on the side of the road.
well, Ryan would tell you too, he does get called sometimes.
Yeah.
Because it was smoking pretty bad.
Yeah. Fire department puts out the cruiser fire. Okay. All
It's
right.
been a source of some pretty.
The next item we have is a proposal for consulting purposes from Goral Palmer. This is a gravel road study. This came out of deliberations by the town budget advisory committee meeting in the last year's time. You might remember we had used Goral Palmer to come up with a paving plan for the town. And then last year they came up with a sidewalk improvement plan. And then the budget advisory committee said, well, if we're gonna look at improving our paved roads and our sidewalks, what about our gravel roads? Because I don't know about you, but occasionally I hear from citizens who are somewhat dissatisfied with the conditions of the gravel road. So this envisions the Goral Palmer Engineering Consultants doing a study that would cover a 5-year schedule for maintenance. And Jack, they're looking at basically a total inventory of the roads and what each road needs.
Right, so they're gonna go out and they're gonna assess existing conditions. And they're also gonna look at the road. They're gonna look at existing conditions and then they're gonna look at kind of the usage of the road. When I say usage, they'll look at traffic and they'll also look at, is it kind of dead end road, or is it a throughway where you get not just the residential traffic on the road, but the connector traffic where it may bypass a certain area, and then they're gonna create priorities based on condition and usage of each road. And then that'll kind of be the basis of how they'll look at year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, and get us on a cycle where we're able to budget consistently and we can move through what needs to be done, with our gravel roads. And what they'll have to do each year is they're going to have to do some more extensive field work. So they're not going to go out and do like sampling, like coring to see, okay, is there how much gravel is left? Or, sort of the specs of the work for each year. They won't be able to do that in the study. But that'll be something each year, there'll be a phase of, because we want to take on, a certain road, then there'll be some field work and they'll basically spec out exactly how that's going to be rebuilt, whatever we're going to use in it, and so forth. So, but this is really going to be the basis for getting on a program and getting on a budget.
So they've given us the presentation here. Their estimated cost for the study is about $30,000 plus an additional $2,000 to cover some of their expenses, travel expenses up here. But it does seem logical to me that we've already done something for paved roads and for sidewalks. So considering how many gravel roads we do have in what is our double township of Dover and Foxcroft, that's an important consideration to go forward with. That helps both Jack and our public works department in terms of answering citizen questions. If they can say, they can actually point, well, we've actually done a study on this and this is what we found on your particular road area. So I think it's helpful. Yes, Steve.
I've only just quickly glanced through this, but I don't see, I might have missed it, but data collecting on our road inventory is going to be very different in the spring versus August or September. Jack, are they going to do 2 samples, or are they just gonna look once and just guess whether the roads are good in both parts of the season?
Well, I mean, we can certainly, make sure that they record in their study, spring conditions.
Yeah.
But every spring is different, you know, there may be roads that have been, you know, in better shape in past seasons that are not in better shape, you know, in the upcoming season. But they're going to be able to see, whatever, doesn't matter what time of year it is, and be able to see where there's no ditches, there's inadequate drainage, which contributes to, you know, those poor conditions. But if we want to incorporate, you know, some type of, you know, spring season, assessment, you know, we can. I know they're gonna do the bulk of this, I think they're gonna try to do the bulk of this in the fall.
Okay.
But, you know, it's also, it's not gonna be a static document either. They, like with paving, you know, we have a paving plan, but they also come out every year and they look at in the fall, what everything looks like. Because sometimes things deteriorate, you know, quicker than what they would anticipate, and the treatment might change, you know, this year compared to what they thought it was gonna be last year. And we always try to bid the paving in February, but it's based on what we observe in the fall. And so I see that the same thing here is they're gonna need an annual review of the condition of the gravel roads, because there might be some, you know, year-to-year changes in where the priorities are. But this is gonna lay out, basically saying, we're gonna need a budget of X annually if we're gonna address gravel roads, just the same way we do the paved roads. And sidewalks.
That all makes sense to me. It's just that I think we all know that certain roads have certain spots in the spring that are repeated offenders. And, if they come in the fall, they've already fixed everything. The roads are in the best condition or at least they should be in the best condition of the whole season by this point in time. And I mean, I appreciate they'll keep coming back, but this is not just a once and done, just like it is for the roads, they come back and reevaluate. I'm just wondering if we're going to get the best prioritization of problem spots if they're coming when they actually look quite good, instead of in the spring when they don't.
I can give you pictures. I would encourage people to share pictures. But my question's on page 6, where it says there are some roads identified by the main DOT map viewer as unimproved. We currently are unclear whether that will be included in this study. What does that mean?
What is a town road? What is it?
Yeah, so what I had to do, just to make sure they knew, is what I had to do was just get a list from the DOT to make sure they understood what is, that they're looking at a town road or an MDOT road, so that they're assessing, make sure they're assessing our roads and not anything that is either private that we wouldn't handle or under the state jurisdiction. So I already clarified that.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
The other piece also was on page 6, just a suggestion for, can we get a heads up when they're out with their windshield survey? Because we also have a lot of chatter when there's a strange vehicle and, or why are they going up and down? You know, who are they? And I'm sure I've seen them before, they label their vehicles and that sort of thing, but just to kind of PR heads up that this will be happening whenever. And will partial gravel roads be included?
Any gravel section. So if you have a section where you have pavement and gravel, any gravel section.
Okay.
Yeah.
We have some that are mixed. And we're also talking about, last year we talked about the transfer station, the long debated issue of do we pave the entrance to the transfer station, which is a gravel road, and should we pave part of it to get people feeling more comfortable about going to the dump in this road? Yeah, that's something.
Following on from Steve's maybe, but in the initial run by Goral and Palmer, can we personalize it by putting someone in the truck with them to drive the 30 miles, or you show them the hotspots or that sort of thing, just so that we know that they're concentrating on some of those areas. And or it does sound like they'll be back springtime.
Yeah,
when
I
there's
think
a hot-
I do think it's important that they come in and they do a spring assessment, and, so let's say that we have a plan submitted, in the, December, January, let's say, or February well, I'd say January for budget purposes, because I'm assuming we want to build a budget for this for next year. So for budget purposes, but I also think before we finalize the work plan, you want to look at, the spring assessment. So, and I think that's going to be a key piece to finalize the actual work plan year to year. Because things could come up that, are unexpected. But, we certainly can have somebody, make sure that they're aware of certain things they might not be aware of, if it's just them driving.
Yeah.
That would be good.
I just thought of someone who would be happy to go along on a tour of the road, but I will not mention his name.
Yeah. Along those lines, the chatter that I've heard since being back in town is, I'm wondering if they'll assess this as well, is the quality of our gravel pits, the quality of what gravel we make, and can that be some part of this study, that are there any specs that we're not making or suggestions that they may have that with our gravel pits, the quality is as best as we can do?
So, yes, the answer is yes. When they spec out an improvement, they're gonna spec out what to use in the base, what to use, in the surface. And we will try to get that out of the pit, and right now, it means we mix gravel from different areas of the pit
Yeah.
to achieve that, but yeah, because if we're not able to achieve that, then we'll have to look at, sourcing, another source of gravel to mix in to get to the standard that we want.
And that's all I'm asking, that we address that, because it seems to be the normal chatter that what we're putting on may not always be the best, blah, 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 if we could address it.
And, for the last few years, we've been having these conversations about, making sure that what we're putting, what we're mixing out the pit is sufficient. And also, we've changed the fabric around that's going on, and we're seeing a big difference in the fabric that we're using now. So we'll continue to use their specs for gravel roads as we, put these improvement plans together.
Okay.
And I talked with Jack earlier, there was a blurb on tonight's news, supposed to be a stabilization soil project that the University of Maine is doing.
Yes.
And so also FEMA is doing their whatever. So I would hope that those will be explored as options along with the quality of the ground.
Oh,
So are we gonna have going forward some type of quality assurance check? So they say we need X amount of material to a certain percentage or whatever it may be, and we're trying to mix it. How do we tell our community that in 2 years, we're still meeting that standard? Because it's easy to do it right away when we're trying to fix stuff, but, people are upset about the roads, and sometimes they rightfully should be. So is there gonna be something in place where we are tracking and making sure that whatever they said needs to be done, we're actually getting it done consistently?
Well, I would encourage us to do the same thing, with these gravel road projects, so we do paved road projects, which is when we do pavement, these folks will spec out the pavement mix, whether it's, 12.5 millimeter or 9 millimeter, whatever. They'll spec that out for whatever road we're doing, and they come up and do inspections of the paving. And then they'll check, make sure temperatures are correct and so forth. Our plan ought to include some inspections by these folks to make sure that, we're maintaining the spec of the gravel that we should, that the depths are correct, and, things like that, because I think it's just good practice to be able to have that guidance, because, that's what they'd be able to flag things, as we go along. So hopefully we can make that part of the plan. It's just not write this up and then, be in a position where we find ourselves deviating from it. We should be sticking to it.
And I'm assuming part of what they're doing with this is we have some roads that 30 years ago might have had 4 houses on them, there could be 30 on it now.
Yeah.
So part of what they're doing is ensuring that the load amount, that difference in traffic is being met. Okay. And who is gonna be the fortunate person who is the point of contact in this agency for our constituents to reach out to with questions, concerns, or ideas? Because one of them really should be that person. I don't mind sending information on, but I think if they're the people, the professionals, there should be a line here for the people in town to email or call and say, here's where I live, here's what I've seen, and that way they have more understanding coming in, whether it's photos or whatever would ease this process along.
I would encourage us to, if we want to have, that, feedback loop where, these folks can hear directly from people is, at some point in this process, either on the front end or, toward the tail end when we're being presented, is to, have it in a setting like this where people can ask questions and talk about, specific things that, still can be incorporated into this. Because that way, it's a chance to kind of do it together versus having that just spread out over the course of doing this.
Right now, I mean, the town manager is the road commissioner, so,
Yeah.
I mean, that's who people are used to contacting and.
I can pass things along, but I also think it's important to
Yeah.
have a presentation so people can see it.
Right.
Kind of understand what went into it, how it would,
Yeah, I think that'd
move
be very,
forward.
very helpful when we actually get the report.
Yeah, there is one, isn't there, can I see here, there's a provision for a public meeting
Yeah.
that's part of this
Yeah.
package.
Yes.
I think
And
that'd
then,
be very
of course,
helpful
we can
for
have our
people.
own as many as we want.
Yeah.
Or maybe even have on the website, road condition update. And let people either send their pictures or comments or come on over for lunch, see my road.
At least we know, get the study done. I mean, we're spending, 30,000 plus on this. That's something that we've never had a professional comprehensive study done. I think it's a good start, and we'll, as you said, there'll be quality assurance and making sure that we're following it the right way is the way to go.
Right, but I mean, I think hearing, oh, we're waiting for the study, if I have a place that I can go and vent, put in a little message to Mr. GP, whatever his name is, that may make people feel better. And just a suggestion.
Yes.
I mean, I agree with Jane as well, and if it's Jack, that's the first point of contact, and then maybe it's Alcina who's logging some of the issues, in maybe part of her job, though I don't know her exact.
Well, one of the things that we're looking at is the entirely new website, right, or a website update. And there's all kinds of new features on these municipal websites now where citizens can go directly to the website, complain about roads or any other issues that bother us, and that goes directly to town staff, and there's a feedback loop. Oh, yes, we got your message.
Yeah.
This has been done. That really is helpful, I think, and it's been well received in all the communities that have gone to that level. So that's I think the ultimate goal here down the road. Jim, can we get a motion to approve?
I made a motion to approve contract with Goral, Goral Farmer to do the gravel road study. Okay.
Second,
Been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor? That's good. Well, that's a good start, and I'm glad that it helps that the budget advisory committee said this is money worth spending. And
I think people are pretty pleased that we did this with paved roads, and if anybody lived in town before the road study, they would most likely agree that it's a lot better since then.
Yeah, I agree. All right, back to Chief Burns. We have an appointment that's asking for the police officer. George, tell us a little bit about George Fry.
So George comes to us, he's former Marine. And when he got out of the Marine Corps, he went to work in the fire service down in Virginia for several years, and he's moved up to this region because this is where his family is living, in Dover-Foxcroft, and he's been working down at Bangor and Bangor Fire Department. He is looking to come work in the town where he's raising his family, and I think he is gonna be an absolutely tremendous fit for us. He's a little bit older, so he's kind of set and settled where he is. So the hope is that we'll get him through the academy and he'll stay with us for a while.
I have nothing against older people, by the way.
He's not that old.
Oh. I really like the way you phrased that.
Not in reference to you.
Guess who's not getting a cruiser?
Not that cruiser.
So no, I think he established in the community, he's got roots here.
Yeah.
And his whole purpose for coming up to Dover is to work, he wants to work where his family is.
So what's the training schedule?
So he actually, what we're seeing in law enforcement as a general trend now is a lot of agencies are having to hire people that have no background, no training. And George came to us with nothing. And so we set him on the path of what he needed to have done. And he's definitely motivated because he got something that usually takes about a month to do. He got done very, very quickly. And he starts, so right now he's gonna start his phase 2 of what's called the LEPS course, which is the next step of his training. That would start September 30th. And that's 2 weeks of training down at the academy. And then once he's done that, he'll be able to start his FTO with us, his field training with us. And then he'll complete that. And then eventually he would end up going to the full criminal justice academy, probably in August of next year. Is what we're getting at.
Grow your own with the people who have expressed that motivation and commitment to the town. That's a good strategy. So, all right, we need a motion to appoint George Fry. Yes,
Motion to
Joel?
appoint George Fry, onto our police department.
Second? Second by Tracy. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Okay.
And just to clarify too, this is actually gonna fill our open full-time position.
Yeah, okay. We'll be back to full swing.
Yeah.
Okay, next item on the new business agenda is looking ahead to our meeting schedule in October. Our first meeting in October was scheduled for October 14th, and that, of course, is a holiday for Indigenous Peoples' Day. So Jack has suggested that we move that meeting to the next day of Tuesday, October 15th. So our meetings next month schedule will be October 15th and the 28th of October. And that's pretty standard for us when we have a meeting date fall on a Monday holiday, just move the date to Tuesday. Any comments on that? Okay. Need a motion then to change that date to October 15th.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, seconded by Jane. All those in favor? Thank you. All right, Jack, so your town manager's report includes that. Something I was doing for them, the whole EV charger station is going forward with that.
Yeah, so, had a very informative meeting last week, with, some of the members of our climate action committee and talking about funding availability for EV chargers. And, there's right now some significant funding available for both level 2 and in some cases level 3 chargers. And so, we met with a vendor, that does really, turnkey, can put a project together, can, handle the application process and, secure the funding and, deal with really that whole end of it and, get us, EV charging stations. And it's something that the committee has kind of laid out as a goal, and we've looked at, where in the town, what town property would be would lend itself location wise to EV chargers. And really the best place, for town property would be Monument Square parking lot. And so that's, we've really zeroed in on Monument Square parking lot as where we'd be able to locate it. You have visibility, you have lighting, you can see it from the, from the main street. It's walkable to, the downtown, because it's between 1 and 2 hours of a charge if you're doing level 2s. And so we feel like there's a significant opportunity to have the funding available to do these level 2s at very little cost. If there was a town cost, we'd be able to use some of our existing grant funds, because we've got a grant, a Complete Streets grant through, the Community Resilience Partnership. So it wouldn't be, if it was a local cost, it wouldn't be, from the taxpayers or from the budget. It would be, resources that we've already received, we could leverage for it. So, that's something we want to at least move forward and with the application and try to get a project lined up, and then I can update the board as to if that's successful and, on track to, make sure that there's any concerns about the location or doing them. And so that would be, what we would be envisioning is, something that would be, pay to use. So it'd be basically, if you want to, plug in, you swipe your card and then you got, a certain amount of time for a charge, and it wouldn't be something that we would be trying to, subsidize or fund. It would be, a service so that people could pay for it that want to use.
Jeff, do we have a number of registered EVs for the town, in the town?
I don't know if that number is easily accessible out front or not. If it is, I don't know what that number is. But, a lot of the idea too is if we can become, a destination where we have the charging, then you put that out on like the Waze app, the apps that people use when they're driving, that they're looking for, hey, I got, 20 miles left on my charge and I need to, find a level 2, they know that, we have them, we become the destination. If they're, in our vicinity, then they come in for a few hours, support our businesses and, be in the community. So it's, most people that own EVs are gonna charge them at home, but this is so that people will not shy away from coming here with EVs because they know that they can get them charged and they, have a easily accessible location to do it. We put that out there.
Yeah, as a perfect example of that, a couple years ago, they put EV chargers in Jackman. And I am going to guess that the count of EV vehicles in Jackman is very low and bordering on 0. But they, every time I've gone through there, there's been somebody there. Unfortunately, somebody was going to go there just as they were ripping up the pavement and they couldn't get to the actual chargers. And I was thinking, oh, you're screwed.
Yeah.
There's no other chargers anywhere near here.
Nearest charger, 100 miles.
Yeah, exactly. Poor guy.
And you've, yes,
Is that power close? Ample,
Yeah, it doesn't require 3 days.
Right.
To do this, and there is power very handy to that site.
I see someone staying up the mill, hotel room, so right around the corner.
Perfect example, yeah.
Some progress being made on the Grange Street demo.
Yeah, that's right. We have an RFP out for the demolition of the structure. It's due next week. And one of the criteria in that RFP is what would be the timeline for completion? So we know that, and that would be part of our decision-making process as to which, proposal we want to accept. We did put in there that in any case, we expect it to be substantially complete by the end of the year. They might need to come back in the spring and, backfill the site and everything and get the grass growing, but it's substantially complete, and, by the end of the year. So, every fall, we invite Arnold and Stacy Shorey to give us have a discussion on the start of the new school year, enrollments, many changes to what's happening either at our K-8 school or at Foxcroft Academy. And so that's scheduled to happen at our next meeting on September 23rd. They'll both be here. Just talked about paved road plans and our sidewalk plan. And so we did budget for sidewalk rehabilitation this year. It got disconnected from our paving bid because the time we put out the paving bid, we didn't know whether we were gonna be starting the sidewalk in this year or not, so they got disconnected. So it got us a late start on having specs, but that work can happen later than normal road paving because it's sidewalk and, the pavement specs will tolerate paving in October and even in early November. So we still have a shot at doing this. So we have an RFP out for sidewalk rehab. And, the thing that we'll find out is if we have, a lot of response, because this time of year, contractors tend to be, busy and finishing up their summer schedules, and we know that a lot of times the weather pushes things into October, but I would just say that we may have an opportunity to do it, and if we, don't feel that it's particularly competitive this year, we also can just, let the money be a larger sidewalk rehab next year. I think we have options, but we do have a shot at getting some sidewalk work in this fall. And also, we are also getting what we call an RFQ, request for qualifications for, you probably recall that we got a SEDS grant over a year ago for rehabilitation of the wastewater plant so that we can facilitate sludge removal and more efficient process for sludge removal. We have an RFQ out for that. That we expect out back in late October, where we'll be choosing a consultant, just like we did with the same type of thing for Lincoln Street Bridge. We did an RFQ, had a consultant to go through the design and bid phase for Lincoln Street Bridge. Same thing for wastewater. They basically do a design and bid phase. And we're actually structured it so they can actually bid on the construction phase as well, if they want to, so that we can keep that project moving forward.
Excellent. That's a big project that people don't usually think about. They just push the toilet and they don't worry about where it goes. Eventually you have to clean up what it is.
And one thing I wanted to mention, and it kind of tied into the gravel road plan, but I also want to bring you a proposal for bridges and large culverts, because we really shouldn't forget about bridges and large culverts. We have 9 local bridges that have large serviceability. When I talk about bridges, Lincoln Street is ours, Autumn Avenue is ours, that we're, moving into a construction phase for Autumn Avenue. But we have other bridges. We have one on Railroad Avenue, we have one on Ames Road, we have one on Hewitt Road. So we have a lot that we've got to make sure we understand in how many years we need to address what. Large culverts fall into that same category. Grove Street that we did a few years ago was a large culvert. We were actually able to get DEP funds to help subsidize that project. So one of the things that Public Works did is they basically inventoried the location of every culvert that we have. That'll actually probably make its way at some level into gravel road information by having all that culvert information. But the large culverts are ones that we have to go through a permitting process, and they tend to be more costly. So what I want to do is have a proposal for the folks on bridges and large culverts, because we really got to get a handle on every year for the next 5 to 10 years, where we're going to be landing. Once we start seeing that Lincoln Street's taken care of and Autumn Avenue, there'll just always be another one that will have to be, that will be in the queue that we're planning on doing, that Alcina will be helping us find funding, whether it's FEMA or DOT or whoever, to try to address the next one.
So the state DOT inspects all of these structures and
And that's
gives them a rating, so you can prioritize scheduling based on how low the rating is.
right. And that's what makes this maybe a little less daunting than the gravel roads, is that we have the DOT inspection reports. You do them every 2 years. So a lot of what we're going to get in that process is based on MDOT inspection reports, and then based on, existing conditions and observations, that our consultant will do. That'll be the basis. But a lot of that work is done for us because DOT's out there doing it and they're always updating. And those 2-year updates will be part of maintaining this plan.
All right, thank you, Jack. Any questions for Jack? Emery?
It could be repetitive because you may have spoken about it earlier, but the sidewalk, if there is any restoration done this year, do we know where they're going? And I asked that because I thought I read something a few months ago about if we do any this year, it'll most likely be downtown Route 15, Route 7 up to towards Monument Square, and I thought, why would we do any work there if if the state's rebuilding all of them?
Well, not only that, so what we're proposing is, Pleasant Street from the base of the fire department up to where the new section is.
Yes,
That's what we're looking at. And one of the reasons we didn't want to do East Main is because it's going to be worked on, but also the sections of concrete, sidewalks, not just asphalt.
yeah,
And it's in the DOT right away. And so it is more time consuming to do projects in the DOT right away than it is on our own. So we wouldn't be able to fit that in, this late in the season. So I think we're gonna be planning that in our February bid package to include sidewalks every year in that February bid package, but especially anything MDOT, because there's just more procedure, more permitting that we have to do in order to work in that. But also, we want to make sure that the treatments that we do to rehab the concrete sections are, we want to double check to make sure that those are the ones that are the most effective based on the condition of the concrete, because you could tell the wear over the years of the salt, wearing and, creating the issues, specifically from Pleasant Street to Route 7. That's, it's in pretty bad shape, so.
Are ready for closing remarks by select board members? If there are any. No one has anything? All right, I would have happy to accept the motion to adjourn.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Joel's already got his hands up. And all those in favor? We're in favor of that. Before 8 o'clock.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, that's why
Oh, I wrote it up there even.
it's in my.
Thank you.